It is a time for review. And today we're going to be reviewing the first base position. We're going to do it's going to be like a Christmas Carol over here. Ghosts of the past, present, and future of first base, how it went, how we think it'll go, and how it might go in the near future on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Locked On Guardians. I want to thank you for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. On top of that, I want to say I'm Jeff Ellis, the host of Locked On Guardians, as I have been since its inception. Before that, and there was a little overlap where I was the lead prospect and draft analyst at 24/7 and Scout. And before that, I wrote for many a Cleveland sports blog, but primarily at Indians Baseball / Indians Prospect Insider. Justin, let them know about you.
Yes, I am Justin Latta. I think we're about almost a month in to me co-hosting with you. It's been a great month. I am currently the managing editor of Guardians Baseball Insider, which was previously Indians Baseball Insider, which was previously Indians Prospect Insider. So that's how Jeff and I got to know each other. Not that I worked there at the same time, but I've also been freelancing for the Willoughby News Herald and Lorain Morning Journal. And I've also been at Burning River Baseball, ESPN Sweet Spot, It's Pronounced Lajoie, and Fansided, and I think that covers mostly everything.
No, so we are across the network doing a thing where we kind of profile players and do this player review, but we decided rather than do a player review, we're going to do our own spin on it and do a positional review and talk about the players who, handled that position and, who we think is going to handle it in a year and who we think might be handling it in 5. So let's start at the past history. First base. It started the year with Bobby Bradley back there. Now, if you're a longtime listener to the show, I was never on the Bobby Bradley train. Hot June of 2021 or not, there were always serious concerns and questions. And I mean, is it bad? I don't know what organization he is with now. They released him.
He is not with one.
Oh, no one picked him up?
No, I have a suspicion that's because he's going to probably sign overseas next year. All those overseas clubs, I think Korea and Japan have a cap on how many international players they can have, so he probably had to wait till next year. That's just a guess. I don't have any inside information, but that's just a guess based on how things have lined up.
He wasn't even on the 40-man anymore, and they just let him go in the middle of August, or the beginning of August, I should say. So it was kind of a interesting cut. He could become a Sam Horn type of figure if he goes over there. I mean, with the raw power and ability, he could, it could be an Alex Ramirez situation all over again, though I will stand Alex Ramirez never got enough of a chance here in America before he went on to become a multi-time MVP in Japan. That is me going way outside the box, but got to throw out the Alex Ramirez reference. He was a superstar when I was 12 in AA. Maybe it was 10, but they were still in Canton then. But Bobby Bradley started the year, and it was essentially until Naylor got healthy, right? And in between, you had the Owen Miller experience for that one and a half great months. And then it was, Miller and Naylor throughout the year, with the postseason then being Miller, goodbye, Naylor, and Array, can't get his name right, Gabby. And, it's interesting to see that full year progression. I thought Naylor would be better, but I didn't think he'd be this good this year. What did you have the expectation he was going to kind of really just firmly have, anything approaching what he did this year?
I don't think it was fair to have any real heavy expectations for Naylor just because of, how nasty that leg injury was a year ago. If you thought he was going to come back and be, a 20 home run guy, he's always had like 30 home run power. The knock on him has been not enough balls in the air. He's had a hard time getting the ball in the air enough to get to all of his power. This year, he had to change his stance a little because of his leg, which turned out to be kind of a blessing for him offensively because he needed to adjust some things in that that stance allowed him to lift the ball a little more, so that was helpful for him. But no, I don't think you could have any expectations for him other than, let's see if he can play, 100 games. How many games could he play? He ended up with almost 500 plate appearances, which is a miracle considering what happened to him a year ago. And the funny thing is, when he came back, Bobby Bradley was on this team for like a couple of days, a week. He played, gosh, how many games in right field did Josh Naylor play? Don't forget, Josh Naylor played in right field this year.
I've forgotten he played there this year. Didn't last long.
No, as soon as they cut bait from Bobby Bradley, Naylor was at first base, and I think they wanted Naylor to play first base all along. I guess they were just hoping Bobby Bradley would, I don't know, give them something, and he didn't give them anything. But
it's kind of interesting, like, to look at Bobby Bradley and look at Owen Miller, because both of these are essentially guys who had a hot month and a half, and then the rest of it was terrible. Like, Owen Miller, in spite of having a month and a half where he was arguably one of the top 20 hitters in baseball, finished the year as one of the bottom 25 hitters in baseball by, runs created plus. Bobby Bradley had that great call up and then just came back to earth and then was really awful at the start of this year. It's like there's while there's not similarities in the type of players, it's similar in how long of a run these guys got based on, and I know what I'm doing with my hands is terrible, so I'm going to stop right now, but the run they got being based on, early success. Like Owen Miller didn't have the early success a year ago, and Bobby Bradley didn't have that early success in his first call up, but both of them, when they got their first, like their secondary look, were successful, and that seemed to carry them through a whole season of opportunities, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Bradley had 8 home runs when he came up in June last season when they finally decided to move on from Jake Bauers. Boy, very nice to spend a whole year not to talk about Jake Bauers, because what a fun little divisive topic that was for a while. But when they moved on from Jake Bauers, Bobby Bradley had that great June, and everyone thought, oh, he's figured it out. He had 955 OPS that month, 8 home runs, and then that was it. Everything was pretty much downhill from there. He didn't hit very well the rest of the season. He finished that year with a 611 OPS after the All-Star break, and really there's no numbers to even bother looking at this year because he had all of 17 plate appearances this year before Cleveland decided they'd had enough, because that was
they're giving Chang more opportunities than him.
Yeah, and Chang, before Chang wore out his welcome too, and I think I remember exactly what happened too, as Bradley, I think, had 2 errors in like 2 games or something. He just looked terrible in the field, and you were like, okay, well that's not good because he's not hitting home runs. So
yeah, and last offseason was part of like one of my least favorite things, the annual. I believe it was before the 2021 season. Maybe it was before 2022. The annual tradition of so-and-so players in the best shape of their life, and they're going to break out. That like never happens. Like maybe they get some additional coaching. It's like, I always joke, it's the Casey Kochman got LASIK surgery every camp. There's some equivalent of that because that's the first one that I really remember from my lifetime. But
hey, it worked for Charlie Peralta.
I mean, it was Logan. This year was Logan Allen was in the best shape of his life, or was that last year? Was it Bobby Bradley? I can't remember. But like, this is literally, I feel like there are writers out there. I can go the opposite way. Those credentialed people, they just have the same article and they changed. I'm kidding.
Oh boy.
I'm a jerk. I can't let certain things go, but it does feel like, to a degree, there is this narrative that like every year, just okay, scratch out the name, put in a new name. This guy was in the best shape. But I'm trying to remember if it was this year. And the fans will let us know, the listeners, if Bobby Bradley was this year, or I think it was Logan Allen was this year and Bobby Bradley was last year, was the best shape.
I think. Well, Bobby Bradley's had 2 stints like that. I think it was last year for Bobby Bradley. It wasn't 2022. It was 2021. And I think Logan Allen was maybe this year. I don't know. It's happened so much. Like Cody Anderson was in the best shape of his life at one point, and yeah, it just, those things almost never translate. The funny thing is, though, for Josh Naylor, for all of the, people out there that poke at his build, yes, he's not in fantastic shape.
No, he is never going to be in the best. He's going to be closer to the Kevin Mitchell riding a bike set than the, Greek god physique ones.
But you want to know what is he spent but he spent all last year and coming into spring training trying to heal from his leg. And let's not forget this either, Jeff, that he was not able to talk to Chris Faleka. Like, he couldn't work because of the lockout. He was not able to rehab at the facilities in Goodyear. He wasn't able to talk to coaches, the trainers, nothing. Like, I'm sure he had back channel communications, but he did all of this without any offseason help from the team.
He had a period where he was like bedridden essentially because that leg injury. I mean, I never want to see it again. Anyone who like tweets that image should immediately get their account suspended on Twitter, and for punishment, they should have to have a one-on-one conversation with Hiram about Yu Chang. If you ever retweet that, again, Hiram, I love your passion. I just like to poke fun sometimes, but I don't know. I'm being a real jerk today. I'm just we all know what's coming eventually before the end of the show, in terms of my jerk moves, but like. When that injury being as bad as it was, it's like he had to spend a significant. Like I remember reading the stories about like him sitting there swinging like a bat in bed while his dad is trying to throw him like pitches or like a modified bat. Like
it was like a sock. He was swinging a sock. Yeah, rolled up
because
socks.
He couldn't get out of bed. Because that's one of the worst injuries. Like when that happened, I go, there's a chance he never comes back. So his performance was fantastic. There's every reason to believe it could get better just with a full off season with, like you said, the hitting coach plus just being healthy.
Right. Maybe he can work on his conditioning if he chooses. Clearly it wasn't a total factor this year. I mean, I don't think his being whatever condition he's in attributed to him having a 512 OPS against lefties. Like that's a totally separate issue. But
yeah, I don't think he's ever going to hit lefties. There are some guys who never hit lefties, and find him a caddy. We'll maybe talk about that in the next segment. But I think all in all, we started this year feeling like this position is a black hole. And now you feel like I don't know if I want to say it's settled because, maybe you view Naylor as someone as a part-time first baseman or maybe a future DH, but you certainly feel a lot better today than you did this time a year ago, right?
You have the strong side of the platoon figured out at the very worst. Like, you can say, okay, we're going to give him the chance to hit lefties and see if he can improve, whatever. But at the very least, that you've got a guy who, look, he had an 856 OPS in 371 plate appearances against right-handers. And we just talked about how he was hurt all last year and came back late this year and still had to find his timing and his comfort. And he was still playing on, a leg issue for most of the season. If he has a full healthy offseason, there's no reason those numbers can't improve. And who knows what it'll do against lefties. But I feel like going into 2023, you at least feel like you have the strong side of the platoon figured out. So that's a huge part of the battle they haven't had. They haven't had that for years. It always felt like they had the right-handed side of the platoon figured out, right? They've always had the guy who can hit lefties at first base, but they've never had the guy who can handle the majority of the reps. And now you feel like you do.
The last platoon I can really think of that was successful there was Ben Broussard and Eduardo Perez. And then it's just more like, hey, those two netted us as Drupal Cabrera and Shin-Chu Chu from Seattle. So I'm like, I don't know how successful they were and how much it was just the trade returns. But it's like I said, you feel good about it. And, hey, Yu Chang's got a chance to play second base for the Red Sox next year, right? With as badly as they're shaping up. So, hey, maybe multiple starters will be from this position in Major League Baseball next year.
That's true. And one in Korea, maybe.
Yeah, they could have 3 players starting across and Owen Miller in the Independent League. So I'm
man, that's a shot.
I guess it's one of, I got a metal water bottle thrown at my head today and now I'm just all things are off one of those days. But we're going to take our first break. We'll come back. I'm going to try to be less of a jerk, and we're going to have some fun talking about, who else could be used to make this a better position, what ways first base could be improved. And then in segment 3, we got Justin here who does the Guardians of the Future podcast. Make sure you're checking that one out and subscribe as well. Obviously, someone who knows the minors very well. We're going to get into the weeds in segment 3 on some possible future first baseman that could be existing
nerdy
system. But first, let's take a break and talk about one of our sponsors, Simply Safe. And I talked about last time with Simply Safe. whenever I buy anything, and I don't mean this as like an ad for like U.S. News, but U.S. News is who I trust. Before I bought my car, I went to U.S. News. That is like the truth. I go and I look, and I've always been a believer in U.S. News. And I'm hyping U.S. News because they called Simply Safe the best home security system of 2022. If U.S. News says it, I feel good about it. If this house that you are seeing around me right now, the previous owners had Simply Safe, and all the equipment is here. It is sturdy. It is functional. Everything about it it's not one of those things you get. I have seen other people who've had home security systems where you look at the sensor and I'm like, how is this sensing anything? They have fantastic equipment. They have a fantastic reputation. And, again, when U.S. News says something, I stand up and listen. They have 24/7 professional monitoring. And when a threat is detected, Simply Safe monitoring professionals promptly contact you and dispatch first responders to your home, even if you're away or unable to respond. 24/7 professional monitoring costs under $1 a day. That's less than the cost of ADT's traditional professional plans. Simply Safe blankets your home with protection, with advanced sensors in every room, window, door, HD security cameras inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion. Don't miss this chance to save big when you protect your home with the best. Get 40% off your order when you visit simplysafe.com/LockedOnMLB today. That's Simply Safe, SIMPLISAFE.com/LockedOnMLB today. Customize the perfect system for your home. There's no safe like Simply Safe. So let's talk about, we kind of touched on it a little. I don't know what I'm doing with my hands today either. I'm just juggling. Rough day. Not a good day for your camera to be off, Justin. I'm just over here clowning it up.
I'll have that fixed a couple of days for anybody who's bothered.
Yes.
I can't be on camera.
I don't say that to like tease you, more to make fun of myself. So after the Guardians spent the last year showcasing Owen Miller as a utility type, who could they, if they decide to move on from him, we didn't really get into Gabby. Is Gabby the guy at first base in that platoon instead? Is it someone on the market? Is it that, maybe Naylor is more of a DH with an Oscar Gonzalez type of platoon deal and they look to upgrade first in its entirety? How would you go?
I don't know. I guess you can go with like Naylor as the DH against righties and maybe have Oscar DH against lefties. I don't know. It's hard to say because they didn't. What they did in the postseason was they had Brennan DH against righties, so it's kind of a weird platoon, and I don't know how much they want to leave DH open to like move guys around. I think you can at least give Naylor the majority of the reps at first base and maybe give him a day off on his feet at DH. I mean, he was good defensively at first base. Think of how many good stretches and everything else he had in the postseason that were kind of game savers. So as far as Owen Miller, safe to say
he's a 79 outs above average for first base, if you're curious.
Who's that?
Naylor. 79. That's a pretty solidly read in terms of his.
Yeah. Okay, but on the other hand of that, Owen Miller is at 91. How do we feel about that?
I think they can't judge first baseman, is what that tells me.
Right. That's not exactly a ringing endorsement for that. If I don't know, maybe it was a postseason thing, but something tells me that if they were willing to move on from Miller in the postseason to Gabby Arias, so then in that situation at first base, he might be the better option going forward. I know, like some people have said, Miller has like good splits against lefties in the minors previously, but he and it's hard to know what they in AAA they could be, because in 2021 in AAA he did not have good numbers against lefties down there, but it was a very short sample size, so it's hard to say. I think that maybe Miller stays in the 40-man roster. I mean, he's got I'm pretty sure he's got options left. It's not like you got to DFA him, right? He's got to have
some left. He's only been up twice.
Yeah, he's got 2 options left, so next year would be his. He didn't get option at all this year, so he still has 2 options left. So you can keep him on the 40, because I still think there's something to be had there in terms of what he can do, but I don't think he's the guy you can say, okay, this is our first place platoon with Josh Naylor, and this is how it's going to work. No, I don't know. Arias, I feel like, is wasted at first base defensively, but if he can hit lefties and he can come into his zone a little bit offensively, I don't see why you can't go that route. But I think the move for 2023 has to be external. Beyond 2023, to me, is the question, because if it's not, if the internal answer isn't Gabby Arias and Josh Naylor at first base, then I don't know what the alternative is. It's either got to be external, and I don't know how long that lasts.
Well, before we jump to 2023, who would you? Okay, so when I'm talking first baseman for me personally, I brought up Brandon Drury a lot. He played some first, some third, even a little bit of second. In some regards, he's perfect for this team because he is that guy who can keep things fluid and open, which we know they love in terms of just roster sense. He could easily be an Owen Miller type, but more. Christian Walker's a name I brought up multiple times. If you want to go out and get a guy who is going to provide that Franmil-esque power that we talked about in yesterday's show, he jumps out to me. The question is Arizona a team look better in the second half with their young talent emerging up for trading him? And the only reason I say maybe is because he's got 2 years of team control left. He's already in his 30s. Josh Bell, everyone brings up. I think he's going to get pricey. We'll talk about him eventually, but who am I leaving off? Should we, Eric Hosmer is available, right? I get people asking me about him from time to time.
Eric Hosmer is the same as you saying the word showcase around me. If I have to watch Eric Hosmer play first base for Cleveland,
I don't get why people like him. I mean, that was the minute that contract signed. I'm like, that is a terrible contract. Objectively, it was a bad deal. The moment San Diego signed Hosmer, it was a bad deal. It didn't make any sense from day one.
It was bad.
He was an inconsistent player, and it was just the oddest thing. He is a guy, he is the Bob Costas love. I don't know who it was back then, but it's everyone loved him for he plays the game right. I'm like, playing the game right is the same as playing the game well. And Santana was a better first baseman the whole time they're in the same division together. But people still like Hosmer. I still had people at the deadline. Why didn't the Guardians trade for him? It's because he's got a terrible contract. Even if San Diego's giving him away, he isn't that good, and Cleveland's on his no trade.
You know what Eric Hosmer is. He is what I like to refer as I know that name, so he must be good. Those are the fans who think that, and this is not to crap on any fans, we don't do that like other podcasts, but when you have a guy that his name, he's popular, he's been around for a while, you're you just assume he must be good. Just because his name doesn't mean he's good.
It's my dad. It's people like my dad where it's he's oh, I don't know most of the other teams, so that's a name I know. It's there's a certain type of fan who doesn't follow super in depth, but still likes to. My dad likes to watch the game, but he's not looking up a box score. He's not doing any of that. So those names he knows do have additional value, and it's everyone watches and enjoys games in different ways. And I do get a lot of call. Anytime a trade happens, my dad's calling me okay, explain this to me. So then I sit down and he gets. Before I do a Locked On Now, I got to do a Locked On Dad, but we talk through it. But I get that. So who, I kind of took the air out of this when I mentioned probably the 3 big names. Is there any other names to mention, or is who do you want? I mean, there's also my sleeper is still Connor Joe because Colorado is terrible, and boy does he murder left-handed pitching.
Yeah, I kind of looked at his numbers too. I don't know. I'm not sure who is going to be moving guys this offseason. I know some people have mentioned Carlos Santana, who was not good against righties this year, but had good numbers against lefties. And it's hard to say, it's a 1-year sample and it's a small sample. Is that something new for him because he's a switch hitter? Is he only good against lefties now? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily go down that route.
I heard that Seattle helped adjust his swing. I heard there were some adjustments in Seattle.
Okay.
Just in terms of the change. Just as
well, you can never rule out Cleveland bringing back a player they like. I know as much as we rag on, I know that player. Cleveland just, hey, we know that player. We like that player. We'll bring him back. So I guess never count that out. Yeah, I'm with you. Josh Bell, I like the fit, but I also don't like the fact that he's 30 and he is probably going to command at least a 4-year deal. And I'm sure Cleveland stays away from that. The names that just make the most sense to me off the bat are, like you said, Christian Walker. I think makes a ton of sense. I don't know if Arizona like, okay, he's 31 and he is as good of a defensive first baseman as he was this year. Like, is Arizona in a position where they're like, oh, Christian Walker, that's our guy for the next 3 years? We don't got to worry. Like, I feel like there are guys on their team they can probably positions on their team they can upgrade, and maybe they can go out and get another first baseman like that. That shouldn't be a building block for them, correct? Like, they have, Varsho and Marte and McCarthy and Thomas and Corbin Carroll. Like, they have all these good players. I feel like Christian Walker probably isn't like a guy where they're like, we have to build around him. So he could probably be
like, Alec Thomas, we talked about, is one of the up for Cy Young, Gold Glove in center field. Christian Carroll was excellent. Corbin Carroll, thank you. Having brain farts all over the place. Dalton Varsho is mostly an outfielder now. He was great. It's like they almost have too many outfielders if they want to shift one down first base. A lot of these guys, had some experience there. Plus, one wonders if, and McCarthy was really good. I mean, rare Virginia hitter who actually hits.
The one and only.
Hope you're listening, Aaron. Hit me in the DMs if you caught that. I always have fun with Aaron about the UVA guys. But going through it, it's like, could you maybe do like some kind of like Carson Kelly, who's a very good defender at catcher, filling that void, a Walker Kelly trade? Like, is there something along those lines, that just to further expand? It's like there's a logic to getting both those guys. And just to kind of put a bow on that point, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you got Walker and Carson Kelly, right? I'm saying the name, yes. Both of those two together are probably still cheaper than Sean Murphy, I think.
Oh, for sure. And trade wise, I mean, what does Walker have left? He's a free agent.
2.
I think after 2024. So he's got 2 seasons of control. Murphy's got a few more. I don't know what Carson Kelly's is, but that's not a huge concern.
He's
got, I think, 2 more as well.
Yeah, 2 to 3.
Is it 3?
It might.
So
I want to say 3. I could be wrong. That's just top of my head. I'll look it up. I won't just.
I would personally love. I said it last season. They should have gone after, and that doesn't mean he's available, but Dalton Varsho, I think, made a lot of sense for Cleveland because of the unique flexibility there.
It's only 2 for Carson Kelly. I didn't realize he had been up that long.
That's fine. That's good for now. And anybody in that window is 2 or 3 years is just a control frame. I think, what is Murphy? 4 years of control?
Yeah.
So he's got a little bit more. He's also,
so it's a way to, like, I think Carson Kelly gives you similar to what Hedges is currently, but has had seasons of better offensive production and should be a better hitter. While 2 years of control, Christian Walker gives you a massive upgrade and brings the power this team needs. And I agree. I mean, I love Varsho. I just don't see him necessarily being someone they'd be so willing to talk about. And yes, that then creates an issue. But I felt like near the deadline, there was talk that they were willing to move Carson Kelly, that they were willing to consider that. So, I just want to take a moment, before giving you another chance to speak on this before we move on, and say, hey, send us your trade ideas for Carson Kelly and Christian Walker. We're already compiling things. We really appreciate the feedback we've gotten. We're going to keep compiling things. So I just want to keep hyping that trade episode that's coming up. So send us your hypothetical offers for what that would look like. And then, Justin, any more thoughts?
No, I think you mentioned all the key players. Like, I feel like Cleveland probably is going to prefer to trade. I don't know. I guess we can revisit this another time, because I know other people have mentioned Brandon Drury. We're also taking free agent proposals as well. So not just trade proposals, but also free agent proposals. So we can talk about Drury.
Mm-hmm.
What is he? 29, 30?
Inconsistent career. That's going to be one of those things that holds him back. He's 30 years old as of August. So, and he had a 2.6 WAR this year, according to Baseball Reference, but has a 2.0 WAR for his career. But he's got it's because some of these years were really up and down with Arizona.
I would probably guess he gets a 2 or 3 year deal. I don't know. He probably made himself a lot of money with this season.
Yeah, I mean, this was, and the thing is, the last 2 years have been the best of his career. Last year was only 51 games, but those are definitely like the highest production over these last 2 years. So,
barrel rate's been the best. Hard hit rate's been the best this year. Everything looks like it holds up. Like expected stats all kind of think that he overperformed a little bit. Yeah, I don't know. He'll probably get a 2 or 3 year deal. I mean, the future Zips projections don't really love what he did this year. They don't think it's sustainable, but I don't know. The numbers look pretty good. I'd say 2 or 3 year deal. So what, Drury and I think Walker makes the most sense. I like the idea of Drury just because he can play multiple positions. You're not like Walker is just a first baseman. That's all you can play him at. I think Drury is a good option, but probably not. They'd probably prefer not to dip their toe in free agency. The only other guy I can think of is Jose Abreu, and I don't know how realistic that is, but I think that would be
a lot of people. He comes up a lot. I just don't think they can afford him. Like, I know. I
don't know. He's 35.
How? I mean,
I know. Like saying the age is like, okay, well, he's 35. That's
there are a lot of teams who were really terrible at DH, and he still had 137 runs created plus this year. He's never had a down offensive season. He's consistent. Yeah, the home runs were dropped this year, but like he still. That's
only due to the fact that his launch angle kind of came down a little bit. I think you could probably help him get the ball in the air a little bit.
But he had a better runs created plus this year than last year. So yeah, he changed how he approached it, but he was a better hitter this year, even with less power. Right. He got on base, the higher percentage. The average was a lot higher now. He's always had high BABIPs, so you could look at that. Like this year isn't an outlier. I mean, it's an outlier by like 20 points, so it's not like a massive outlier.
Right. So career 327 and 350 this year. He still almost had a 4-win year. He had a 3.9 WAR this year. That's the second best. That's the third best year of his career. He had a 5 his rookie year, a 4.5 in 2017. And a 3.9. That was his third best year by WAR. So you know what?
I mean, depending how you want to look at that 2020 year, where it's only half a season and he got a 2.9 or a third of a year, like that's kind of the one you have to. Arguably, I would say it's probably his third best season, but that just me being.
No, but I'll take it. I think he's a good fit for this lineup. It just depends on what the
agree.
Level is in him. I don't think he's somebody you have to give a long-term deal to because he's 35. It's not like anybody is going to go out there and be like, all right, here's a 4-year deal. Like I think he's going to get one with some sort of option or some sort of like
I wouldn't be shocked if he got like a longer contract because we say that and then remember that like Carlos Santana at entering his age 35 year got a 3-year deal from Kansas City. Weird things happen.
I wouldn't compare what Kansas City did, though.
No, I know, but like weird things happen in free agency. He's a more productive hitter. I mean, Carlos Santana was coming off of a truly awful year when he got that. So I think it's like he has been healthy, consistent, and productive. I wouldn't be shocked if he gets a 2-year with like some kind of like 3rd-year clause that's based on performance.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like I could easily see a 3-year deal. First 2 years guaranteed, 3rd year based on plate appearances. And like I said, I could see San Diego doing that if they lose Josh Bell and coming back and trying to get him because they don't have anything. There's a lot of teams that DH was a surprisingly, maybe not because, it's like we just introduced DH in the National League this year, right? Sometimes it's hard to remember how recent it was. It's like, technically it was 2020, gone in 21, back this year. So a lot of teams weren't prepared for it. And there's still a lot of teams with needs. And I think Jose Abreu is going to cost more than people expect.
Yeah, you're right. I think Walker probably is the most sensible option because Cleveland needs to make a trade, and they can make that trade. It just depends on Arizona's willingness. Beyond that's like the only trade option I think is out there. I mean, Colorado and Connor Jones. I don't know. I feel like his success is mostly Coors related.
I don't know. He was that guy though. Like you look at the numbers, he was good in Tampa, he was good in Minnesota, and then he finally got his contract in Colorado. But he at least has had success outside. Like he just kept getting 1 year. Like he was good for 2.5 wins. I feel like for like 2-3 years there, and I could be completely wrong. I'm not confusing him with his brother because Kevin was not very good.
Yeah. So okay, we talked about external options. What about the future?
Well, let's take our commercial break and come back and talk about some of those young players in the system and maybe some young players further down the line. And we are back. So, who are the best first basemen in this system?
It's not great. Everyone's going to say, oh, they have Jhonkensy Noel. You and I are both very timid on his future. I know,
K rates like his almost unilaterally fail. I say almost because we've seen I know there's people who are going to be like, hey, and you said that guys like Oscar Gonzalez almost unilaterally fail. And I'll be like, yes, I did hear that. But there's a reason why we have those concerns. Most guys with K rates that high, it's not good.
I'll give Noel this. He got to AA this year, and he was striking out a lot at Lake County, a lot. And he got to Akron, and he lowered his K rate by about 9% in the same amount of plate appearances. So you could say the sample sizes are even. He's only 20 years old, so that's encouraging, I guess, if you want to look at it from that perspective. Obviously, the power is ridiculous. When he makes contact, the ball is hit really hard. He ran into some bad luck in Akron, but he was also swinging at a lot of pitches that he just couldn't drive, and he was making too much contact with pitches that were, he wasn't going to do anything with. He was hitting pitchers' pitches, essentially, like, Oscar Gonzalez. So it's one of the knocks on him. So there we go. But I don't know. It feels like Noel or bust. Do you move Nolan Jones to first base? Because it seems like they had Noel in AAA to end the season, so you're going to have him and Jones maybe play first base in AAA. I guess that's an option. I like Micah Pries. I know he's not like a high-end prospect or anything, but he had a pretty good year in Akron. Was almost a 2020 guy. Comes from a small school in Loma Point, Nazarene. It's a Division II school, and he played center field there. He had Tommy John when he got into the system, and between playing in Division II and then missing 2 seasons, he didn't play in 2019 or 2020. He's come a long way very fast. So I wonder if there's some late bloomer potential there for him. And I like him. They played him a lot of first base this year. Outside of those three guys, I'm just there's nobody else to really look at. Joe Naranjo had a bunch of home runs this year, but I'm not a huge fan.
He repeated the level though, too, didn't he?
He did, but he was still young for the level. But that's still
21. It's not old, but for repeating a level, it's
right.
It's not like Ulysses. When they drafted a first base only high school kid, my mind went back to Ulysses Cantu. He has not been Ulysses Cantu. Ulysses Cantu was pretty much all bad, and Naranjo had a good year. I also feel like it started out better than it ended.
It did. He got off to a really hot start. He was he went from a guy who I think we thought was going to be all hit tool, like Jake Bowers, all hit, no power, and now he's kind of a 3 true outcome guy. He strikes out a lot, he walks a lot, he hit some home runs this year. That was a very odd change for him. The other guy we can talk about that I think is interesting, he's not going to be a full-time first baseman, but I think we should talk about in future episodes, is David Fry.
Yeah, I have him. He's one of my tabs right now for this episode.
Yeah, he would be a great fit for this roster next year because he would give Terry Francona that third catcher that he always wants on the bench because, he's afraid to pinch hit for his catchers, and who knows who the 2 catchers will be next year. But you can play Fry. I was talking to somebody who works in the system earlier today, and he was saying, he thinks David Fry would be a really good asset for Terry Francona. He thinks that he handles third and first base very well for a utility guy, and he's not a bad catcher. He's not having a whole lot of luck throwing out runners in Arizona in the fall league, I will say. I think he's 2 for 14, which isn't great. But you have to remember they're using the new rules where the pitcher can only step off or throw over twice. And that may not be good for Fry, but he might, I think essentially he'd be your emergency catcher if he's on this roster. He'd be on the roster to be the emergency catcher, and maybe he can play a little bit of first and then play against lefties and maybe third base if you need him to.
Because that's the thing too. It's yes, the positional flexibility is awesome, but am I crazy that if he is up, he should be almost like a full-time player against lefties until he proves he can't to a degree? Because he was so good against lefties this year. I think he was one of the best hitters in the entire system in terms of production against left-handed pitching.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know his numbers this year were 100% better against lefties, and they have room. There's room to add him to the 40 if they really wanted to. It's not like.
And for those who don't remember, he was the return for JC Mejia, and it was really interesting because it definitely felt like a situation where JC Mejia was traded for a player to be named later, and they added Fry specifically after the Rule 5. Like he was a guy they targeted. They wanted to get him if he cleared the Rule 5. So there was concerns a year ago. At least that's how it certainly seemed to me, where it was like after the Rule 5 was announced that it wasn't going to happen, that deal was completed. And Cleveland got him. So there were concerns a year ago that he might get selected because flexible utility types get picked. Do you think, let's put it this way. So I think you and I both agree the number one player to protect is Martinez. Number 2 would be Cantillo. Do you think Fry is the third most likely or the third biggest need to protect?
I don't think it's a giant need, but I would add him just out of pure value and see how
would he be your third ad?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here. I haven't really decided on who I feel like needs to be added.
It's like Hankins is the big name, Torres is the big name, Gabriel.
No, none of those guys need to be added because
Gabriel Rodriguez had some signs of life this year, but before his injury, which might make him an easier selection because he's hurt.
I was going to say I worry about his injury situation. I don't know. Micah Pries, to me, I think would get taken. Yeah. And then you've got, your slew of relievers. You've got Tim Herron and
No, I know you would protect Herron before him. You do like Timmy Herron.
I do.
Not there's any reason not to. I mean, he might be the top left-handed reliever in this system. I mean, it's it's not a deep group, but it's hard. Indiana is not known for. Yeah, well, but is he a lefty?
I know he had a down. No, but I know he had a down year. I just worry that someone takes him and they're like, okay, we're going to get him back up to speed.
Well, I wouldn't be shocked if the Guardians find room to protect him. Like, they kind of have their arms they like and they know, and even after a down year, they'll stick with a guy.
I think it's Martinez, Cantillo, one of the relievers, and then Fry. That would be my order. Figure out a reliever, and get Cantillo and Martinez protected, and then figure out one of the relievers, and then go to Fry. But I would definitely protect Fry.
And I do want to double back to Noel again. I think the thing is the reason you have hope is the monstrous power, and the fact is you have to give the guy credit because every year he's improved. So we'll see what he does this year, and even through the course of this year, he did improve. I think it's just you and I have had too many guys and I know it was only this year in high A where he had that K rate over 30%, but I think through the years we have seen so many guys with that high K rate, it just makes us allergic to anything over 30. So I wonder
the pitching gets better. The pitching gets better. That's the thing.
And yes, and his dropped when he moved up, which is a great sign. So I do want to say that I think we have a degree of an allergic reaction to, like, I'll call it a Bradley Zimmer like K rate. And
here's the one thing. This is the last thing I'll say because we probably should move on or get out of here. But whoever Cleveland acquires, if they decide to go external for a first base option or someone to platoon with Josh Naylor, all the options we mentioned, I think, are the only fits out there. I don't think they're going to they didn't get Matt Olson last year. So I think the only options they consider are going to be the Walker types, the Drury types, the maybe Jose Abreu. And if everything falls right to them, those are guys that are 2 or 3 year placeholders. They're not guys that will block Noel if Noel is the real deal. So you're going to get somebody in the short term, and they'll give Noel a chance to be the future. And if not, they'll have to pivot from there.
Nope, exactly. This was a long one, which is funny because we planned like extra things for every episode. We have backups, and we don't need any backups. We need shorten ups. So I'm just going to run us to the end here because I don't want to stay at 45 minutes. So I want to thank you all for listening. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It really helps our show to grow. Leave us a review on iTunes. And in terms of our subscriptions, we're up to 792, 8 away from 800. So let's get us over 800. That's the goal. That is your homework as a teacher. I'm assigning you homework. It is to get us to 800 YouTube subscribers. Thank you again. We appreciate and love you all. And we end every show by saying, go, go, Guardians, go.